Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the Inside Spurs channel. Happy Monday morning to you all. Hope you're all right. Hope the week is looking promising and looking ahead. Obviously, no Spurs football for a little while now, with an international break being here, so they can't ruin your mood. I promise you. All right. As much as if you live on Twitter, you will get ruined. But yeah, no Spurs football for a little while. So trying to do some things a little bit different this week. Want to try and make it a bit more interactive, a bit more of a conversation and just sort of getting a bit more of a general view from not just myself, but from other people, seeing if I'm missing something, seeing if you're missing something. So we're going to be talking about the season as a whole. Okay, we're not going to be diving into this many losses, this many that. I think Twitter use that to death. We'd rather have a grown-up conversation talking about the league as a whole. Talking about the cup competitions. I want to talk about Europe, obviously. I want to talk about the things that need to change going forwards at the club. I think things that need to change into next season at the club. I want to talk about Newcastle yesterday. Congratulations to the Geordies, obviously winning the League Cup yesterday. So I want to talk about that as well and why that's impactful on Spurs. So there's so much of a real more of a conversation piece in this video, okay? So don't be like some other people and come in here and be miserable 24/7. Okay, come and have a conversation with me, because it was quite funny yesterday. Didn't half get a bit of abuse. Apparently, I'm an ange sexual, even though I said that I'm not ange in or ange out. I'm an ange sexual because apparently I don't agree with everyone's beliefs, so therefore it's all my fault, which is quite funny. Good amount of abuse. It was a good amount of abuse yesterday, which was quite interesting. Morning Spurs, morning Sonia, Dragon, Mark, Boris, Callum, EZ, Jazz, XL. How are we all? Hope we're all okay. So look, the league as a whole. Let's start with the league, and then we'll come on to the domestic cups, and then we'll come on to Europe. Okay, the league as a whole, yes, hasn't been good enough. It's 15, 14 losses or whatever it is in the league this year. It's not good enough. Okay, it isn't. No one is going to, even Ange, the most Ange-in supporters, right? They won't agree that this league campaign has been good enough. Now, there's context, obviously, to a lot of these things. And yes, injuries and suspensions have been quite a massive part of it. Without, let's say, just half of that sort of thing, maybe we'd be better. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, as Ange would say. But it is to the point now, okay, what's happened has happened in the league. It's March 17th. We played on March 16th. So between the start of the season and March 15th, obviously being the Saturday, what has happened has happened. We are now at a situation where we're probably as healthy as we've been since about September, okay? I'm not saying we're 100% healthy, but we're healthier, okay? The issue I think some people are having is what they saw against AZ Alkmaar was much more Ange ball. They saw the attacking play. They saw the link up that they had been sort of missing. They saw things that they used to see. And, you hold the club, or not, I wouldn't say the club, it's not a fair thing to say. You hold the squad to that sort of level. And occasionally, yeah, you're going to lose games. I don't think anyone's going to deny that you're going to lose games from time to time. It happens in football. It's how you lose them is the issue. And sometimes this season, we have gone out on whimpers. And that's what I think people are having the issue with. We go out on a whimper. Now, if you lose a game 3-2, but it's, balls to the walls, it's you going for it, you lose by deflection, you'll still get people, unhappy and things like that because that's who they are. Your more rational human would go, it happens. You lose games. We gave it a whirl and we didn't go down, as a sinking ship. The issue is this season, there's been too many times we have gone down as a sinking ship. Now, is that an Ange ball situation? Is that an injury situation? What is that? Let's jump in and talk about it, okay? Because I think there is a little bit of both. And that's the fair way to say it. You'll get some people that will say, we've lost these games all because of Ange. There is nothing else to say. There's no one else at fault. And obviously that's wrong. Okay, it is. We all know it is. But there's also times where you go, he needed to be better. And there's nothing wrong in saying both those things, okay? You're allowed to have your opinion. I'm not saying you're wrong in terms of if you're Ange in or Ange out, but completely ignoring context is why I'm saying people are wrong. Then it's also important to go the other way where if what we're looking at right now is a squad that is a lot healthier and the performances haven't really improved, then you can also say there's the context to go the other way. And that's why it's important. Context is key regardless of the situation. Okay. You look at Liverpool right this second. The last 3 weeks, Liverpool gone out of all their cup competitions. Okay. They lost in the final yesterday, they lost in the FA Cup against Plymouth, and they went out against PSG this week. People say, well, the season's a failure. Well, they're going to win the Premier League. That's a success. That is. Context is key. Mohamed Salah scoring 1 goal in finals. He's a great player, but in the finals, what has he done? Context is key. He's still a great player. Okay. So I think in theory, when I look at the season now, between this international break, okay, and the end of the season, we've got about 2-ish months. Okay. Let's just say 2 months for the sake of argument. Things have to improve. Okay. And I know a lot of people have sort of talked about sack off the league. Just sack off the league. Don't worry about it. And then obviously we do what we did yesterday, and it's actually still an issue. You can't sack off the league. And I think you should be sacking off the league anyway. For too long, I think a lot of the issues as well is, yes, there's issues in the board. There could be very much issues at the ange level as well. And there could be issues in the playing squad. I think there's issues across the board. Yeah, not across the board. I mean, everyone. I think there's issues, and I think all parties must hold blame. They must, right? I think higher ups cutting wages, really not trying to compete in that regard. Wage increases, like all the other top big boys do, it normally correlates to success, right? That's how it works. Wages correlate to success because you can get the better players because obviously you're going to pay them a bit more. Okay. That's one issue. Second issue with the Ange Ball side of things is it seems to be that we can't ever get consistency. Now, yes, injuries and suspensions, they happened. It is a part of our season. It is a part of context. But right this second, we are a lot fitter. I mean, you look at the team that played against Fulham, Matisse Tell probably coming in with fresh legs. Desiadog coming in with a fresher set of legs. Ben Davies, I won't really pinpoint him. He's been injured for a few weeks. Romero played the minutes that he was supposed to play, did so. He looked very good for it. But obviously, at the end of the day, let's not try and run every single player into the ground just because they're back and they're fit. With Pedro Porro, Pedro didn't even play, did it? It was Jed Spence. I thought Spence played well. I won't really kill him for it. Obviously, Vic has been good, but in the midfield, the performances in the midfield have just been really, really subpar for so long. Bergval's been really solid, and again, coming off the bench at half-time, he was miles better than the two senior players that played in front of him yesterday. Again, I expected him to be rotated out due to, potentially having the issues with his hamstrings after Thursday night. I didn't expect to see him start. I was glad to see him come on at half-time. I was. But there are senior players in that midfield who are not living up to the billing. We know who they are. I won't go into that. So the consistency that we're lacking is killing us right now. It is, Morning, Simo. You right, mate? AZ says, I just think we really have one creative midfielder fit while Kulusevski is out injured. The midfield is really not good enough, and I don't think playing Maddison every game is good for anyone. Yeah, I thought Maddison might give you some more... Sorry, that's not the right English. I thought Maddison would give you more minutes than he did, obviously, on Sunday. Again, I haven't seen recovery. I haven't seen training. So maybe, there was something there that sort of popped up and they said, he's not going to give you 45 minutes. He'll probably only give you, be able to give you about half an hour. And if so, then it is what it is. You can't really get around that. I think for too long, we weren't careful enough with our players. I think some people are now saying we're too careful, and there's a grey area between everything. If you go too far one way and too far the other, somewhere in the middle, you're probably about right. That's what they always say. There's a grey area here. There's a grey area here. Somewhere in the middle is just that sweet spot to me. Okay. Tweener, as I like to call it. He went from hardly rotating to now perhaps rotating some players. Too much having injuries in the back of his mind. This season just highlights how bad Spurs are as a club. Poor planning, poor recruitment, poor football director, and poor medical team. He can improve us a massive amount by stopping inverting the fullbacks, but he won't. He's too stubborn and pig-headed. I'm sick of his attitude to fans. I completely disagree on the attitude to fans. Again, don't read the transcript. Listen to him. Okay. He didn't call out the fans the other week, actually, after the ahead of AZ Alkmaar. He actually reasoned and understood as to why we felt the way we did. Again, I'd never read the transcript. I just listened straight to him, to be honest. Tone is just as much as important about the wording. If you ever saw a video, there's a video, it's a great one, of how people speak to a dog. And someone did it in like a really depressed, monotone voice, but he said how much he loved the dog. And the dog didn't respond very well. He then said, he hated things about the dog in a really high-pitched voice and excited voice, and the dog responded really well to it. So it's about how you deliver something just as much as actually the message in there. He hasn't actually been bad to the fans about that. You can take it what you want to. I took it the way I want to. I've moved on from it anyway. What has wages have to do with losses? These are quality players. So every single loss this season is all down on Ange. Am I taking that from what you're saying, Excel? Every loss this season is completely on Ange. There's nothing else to do with any of the losses this season. If so, interesting. His attitude to people who actually know far less about football than they think is fine. Sorry, fine. I think he's worried about more injuries. That's why. Yeah, I think so. I think so. You not seen the video where he bit back at a fan? Again, I haven't heard what the fan said, but just because you pay for a ticket doesn't mean you get to abuse or anything like that. And after Bournemouth, one of those situations you're talking about, Simo, he was actually abused. So he bit back against that, which, to be honest, mate, if I turn up to your workplace and called you fat and called you every name under the sun, I'm thinking you'd probably react quite poorly to me as well. And you'd go, what gives you the right to say such a thing? I go, because I paid to come into this workplace, so I get to say what I want. And that's not the way the world works. So it depends what was said. Not going to judge on it until I actually can hear what was said. I didn't hear anything personally, what was said. All I saw was his reaction, which means the interaction that he had the issue with, it felt like it was probably done just before the video kicked in. Oh, the fan said, what was that, did he? Yeah, well, maybe don't bite on that one. Thing is, if it was what was that, again, tone is everything in these situations. I wouldn't bite on it personally. But to say every situation has been the same, it hasn't been. Because if that's what was said and it was just that, then try not to bite on it. Okay. I know it's difficult. I know it's not easy, but you have to try and sort of just ignore it. Just get to the change rooms. Okay. The Bournemouth one away, I won't put that in with that one if that's the case, because the Bournemouth one is abuse and it's verbal abuse, and that's not acceptable. If it's just what was that, got to be stronger there. Ange has more vote. Well, no. Anyone that stands there and goes, he just keeps his hand in his pocket and doesn't say anything, is really just trying to just say something just to garner a reaction out of people. Because I can hear him in games absolutely rollicking the players. I think the man's emotions are already high. I think given a few days, he might not have been. But yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. But just for me, if it's just a little snidey comment, just look, you're only a few steps away from being out of earshot from these people. Just try and get there, But it's not always the same, is it? Morning, Dees. I think yesterday was Fulham fans getting it in. Maybe so. But again, it's a snidey little comment. Try and get past it, If all the players are performing bad, it should be the manager's fault. It shouldn't just be the manager's fault, should it? You retracted your comment, XL, but I've seen it before you actually got rid of it, mate. But yeah, walk away. Try and walk away. Yeah, I would say he's ignored the criticism for a good chunk. But I also think I think managers have reacted to a lot less, for sure. I can label you ex-Spurs managers that reacted to a lot less. But again, if it's just a snidey little comment, try and just get past that. Try and walk past that. The abuse, different. I can see why he's reacted the way he reacted at certain games, because it's not a snidey little comment. It's verbal abuse, which is not acceptable across the board, you know. So anyway, we're going to move on because I've got so much more to talk about. So look, that's on the Prem side of things. Obviously, the Cup side of things, the EFL Cup, look, we played well. We got to the semi-final. We were 90 minutes away from being in the final. That obviously happened yesterday. Again, congratulations to Newcastle. I think really it was probably more so exhaustion and injuries for that semi-final. Obviously, we didn't help ourselves in that game at all. We like to shoot ourselves in the foot. But to be honest, I think that was more so that Liverpool sort of hit fourth and fifth gear and we couldn't fight that. When you're missing 12 players, it's pretty hard to fight. But in the Cup, look, we obviously knocked out Manchester City. We knocked out Manchester United. It wasn't obviously maybe the campaign ending that we wanted, but to be honest, I don't know if I ever really truly saw us getting into the final. The fact that we won the first leg and actually gave ourselves a chance was impressive enough as it is, because we weren't that great in the first leg either. But yeah, the EFL Cup, you know, I think was somewhat, there was some good stuff to take out of that. Yeah, okay, the semi-final ending the way it did wasn't great, but I think before that, there was a lot of positives. The FA Cup, what? We went in the fifth round to Villa in 2-1. It's Villa away. It's not an easy game, you know. I think there's things in that game that definitely we should have been better at, but again, I think there's a lot of issues around that. But yeah, it's not the way we wanted to end that. But I think for the most part, that performance wasn't good enough until sort of the 85th minute. And I think there's a lot of issues. I think there's a lot of issues with that, to be honest, because that's a common theme across the board. You all said Conte was brave for going against the grain, calling out everyone, but when Ange gets a bit defensive, you all hate him. Yeah, I mean, but Conte was also a coward. So, you know, Conte's ball than what? No, Conte, mate, Excel, can you load up Napoli's highlights against Venezia yesterday? Venezia, who are second bottom in the Serie A. It was the worst football I think I've witnessed in decades. It was awful. So if you're thinking Conte ball is actually half decent, I don't swear on this channel, but F me. F me. Andrew's getting away. This Poch got sacked when we were having a bad start to the season after the UCL final. I've sort of backed Poch in regards to, can you see a common correlation with the fact that we didn't back him? You know, the wages weren't really where they should be. Therefore, we start to come down. And it all stemmed really from Poch. We hadn't won away in the league for over a year. Mourinho comes in, first game, London derby, away from home, win 3-2. So Mourinho did more in one game than Poch did away from home in the Premier League in a year. Don't forget that. All right? I think, you know, that's we love revisionism. We love to go back 7-8 years. But it wasn't healthy under Poch at the end. It wasn't. We were what? Mid-table-ish. Hadn't won away in the league for over a year. The Champions League run really covered up a lot of things, you know. I loved Poch. I still love Poch. Do I want him back? Not really. I sort of have the idea, you don't go back to an ex. You don't go back to an ex-partner. And I love Poch for what he did. I do. But we have to look forward. This is what this video is about, because I'm going to go into the Europa League situation because it's obviously very relevant right now. And I'm going forward into what needs to happen going forward, because I think there's a lot of questions at the moment about Spurs. There's a lot of questions about what we're at. I think some people think we should be here. Every number correlates to us being about there, and we're about here right now. And there's the issue. People think we should be top four every season because we've got, you know, we had Harry Kane and we've got Heung-Min Son and Christian Romero. And it's also realizing that, you know, teams like Chelsea, who are not in the top four, have spent $1.5 billion in the space of 2 years. Manchester City are struggling, but they can spend 400-500 million quite frequently. Manchester United has spent over 1.5 billion in the last 10 years. It's not over, actually. It's about 1.3. They spent more than City in that time. You know, Liverpool signed a keeper for 75 million, a defender for about something similar. Arsenal spent £100 million on one player. Their wages and also with all these teams, The key thing is all of their wages have kept going up and up and up. As their revenues have all gone up, their wages have followed. They cut on certain players. I'm not denying that. But they are also paying wages for players of quality. Villa, 97% of their revenue goes on their wages. Newcastle pay a crazy amount of revenue on their wages because they're trying to win. We spend about 35% on wages. Villa at 97%. If you want, where I think a lot of our fans think where we should be fighting for league titles and things like that, that won't happen with 35% wages, by the way. It won't. People will talk about Forest and look at them. Just go back into their finances for the last couple of years. They have been pushing financial fair play and past. They have spent hundreds of millions. So what I'm saying is correlations, you know. I'm still getting the vibe that Ange is still being backed. I think to say he's still being backed, I wouldn't say it's there. I think what we're doing right now at the second is bringing in a manager right this second. I don't know if it really will do anything. And what I mean by that is we're in the midst of the season, right towards the end of that season. Not managers don't want to take over clubs at that point, right? They don't. They want to get into a summer or they want to take over before January so they can implement and get players in that they want. You look at the situation under Amorim. He's been through the wars, isn't he? He has not had an opportunity to change that squad the way he would want to. You're not going to get that now. So I don't think you're going to get a manager that you would truly want long term. You just be getting a stopgap. And obviously then there is a situation that you are still in Europe. And for anyone that thinks, I'm not confident about Frankfurt, fine, not a problem. But argue with the wall, we're still in Europe. And that's why they're not changing it. I think had we gone out of Europe, I think he would be gone. I think it would get changed. But because you're in Europe, it's not going to get changed, This fan base is too toxic. Between that and the board, why would anyone else want to manage us? I think we need to change just as much as club stuff. We do. Twitter is a very small minority of Spurs fans, okay? Those guys are so miserable. I loaded up Twitter today. We're not even playing today. We're not even going to play for 2 weeks. And it's just people still so miserable. It's like, guys, we don't play for 2 weeks. Just chill out. Try and enjoy this week alone. There's international football, but there's no real football on. Just try and enjoy a week without football. Maybe focus on work, focus on your friends and family, spend more time with them, do something else. It's just like, you can't be miserable 24/7, surely. You can't be this down in the dumps. That's why I am very rarely on Twitter, and I couldn't do it. I just can't be on there. For me, it's just too much. And to be honest, you can make Celtic win a treble by copying the same play style of Pep Guardiola. The only thing about him is that he gives a good speech. I mean, then Hitler. I don't know who Hitler. Oh, mate, don't bring that in here. Don't bring him in there. All right. That's not it, Chief. That's not it. But all top 16s have performed below par. You're allowed. What I don't get is, yes, some of them have had bad seasons. What they normally do is they then make either they're going through a change and it's going to take some time, or it's a massive rebuild. If it's a massive rebuild, look at the clubs that have gone through a massive rebuild recently, right? Arsenal, they've spent obviously crazy money, spent a lot of money. Maybe the cup success isn't there as we speak, but obviously, they're still in the Champions League. I know they're playing against Real Madrid, who have like a curse on the Champions League to other teams. Obviously, after the penalty shootout, you might think that, but they're still in the Champions League. They still could win something. Okay. You've got Liverpool, who for years had people like Ricky Lambert and Fabio Marini up front. Klopp comes in. Yeah, first season's a bit ropey, but again, it's about clearing out the squad and getting players in that suit him. But then they cleared the squad out. They then changed a lot of things. They then, backed him. A lot of our managers, and this is where I'm going to back actually, managers that have been sacked previous for us. A lot of them have been told you kind of have to work with these players because we're still sort of paying them off and we can't make our money back on them. So you need to make them look good. So that means we could sell them on. But if you can't, then we're going to be stuck with them. See Sergio Reguilon. We've done it with other players. Like, I mean, even Tanganga had some value, but we sort of moved him on and went, it's not worth it. Just move him on. It's one less thing to worry about. Sessegnon, obviously, irony about yesterday, but aside, it's about, cutting your losses and just moving on quickly. We hold on to players. That's our issue. We don't seem to move players out the door enough. We seem to kind of just go, no, stockpile them, hold on to them, and hopefully someone will be silly enough to give us some good money for them. And then 3 years later on, oh, no one's giving us any money. Well, we'll let them go on free. It's like, well, you wasted 3 years. Sergio Reguilon still has a squad spot at Spurs. He should have been gone years ago. If you search Sergio Reguilon and go on images, most of the time his Manchester United photos pop up first. That's kind of an issue. Do you not think? He's been a Spurs player, paid by his wages by Spurs for years. And the first few images are Man United in pictures. That's a problem, Session was a hospitation at our club. Yeah, I mean, look, medical side of things, they need to improve. They do. Eddie Howe took 3 seasons to win a cup. Spurs managers lucky to see past 2. Well, that's the thing with, Mourinho getting us to a final and not having a chance in that final was a financial decision because obviously the club, in terms of a fan base, didn't like Mourinho. Had he won that, obviously meant that I think it was like his payout would have increased in terms of sacking him. And Levy went, I'd rather sack him and save money than actually have to pay him. Again, that's another thing. When they asked him, your proudest moments as being, as Spurs owner, the top 3 did not include winning a trophy. That, if you don't think that's a problem, that's a problem. That's a guy that doesn't care about winning. But we got our Tottenham back. But yeah, Europe, right, let's talk about Europe. Obviously, in the quarterfinals, the 10th and the 17th. So we'll know, actually, in about a month's time. Are we still in Europe? We could be out in a month's time. It's the 17th of March today. We obviously have a situation in Europe where you win, obviously, the Europa League. You get automatic qualification to the Champions League. We know that, okay? That's not groundbreaking news. I'm not shocking anyone with that news. Can we do it? You've got to be in it to win it. As presently constituted, I don't feel so good. Now, I have actually witnessed Spurs play in Europe last week. Okay. Now, this team that we played isn't as good as Frankfurt. I'm not going to deny that. I actually ended up missing. How did Frankfurt? They won 3-1 yesterday away to Bochum. They have Michy Batshuayi play for them. I did not know that. Michy Batshuayi came off the bench. Interesting. How did they actually play? They had less possession than Bochum. They had the same amount of chances as Bochum. They just took them. And that's what good teams do. When you get your chances, you take them. But with Frankfurt and AZ, Frankfurt, yes, are better than AZ Alkmaar. Not denying it because Frankfurt knocked out Ajax. Ajax are ahead of AZ Alkmaar in the Eredivisie. But in that game alone, when my 2 centre-backs were playing, and not a central midfield player as centre-back, I mean my actual 2 centre-backs playing, we had kept a clean sheet, we were 2-0 up and cruising. So do I go into that Frankfurt game as gloomy as Twitter is and thinking, oh God, we're going to get relegated and we're going to be awful for 40 years because of everything at the club? No, I don't. Do I think we've got a chance? Absolutely. I'm watching 2 unbelievable Rolls-Royce centre-backs against AZ Alkmaar, and we won 2-0. We were going through automatically, right? I watched us with 1 centre-back, because Ben Davies is a left-back by trade. I watched us with 1 centre-back for 68 minutes against Fulham. 0-0. I get, obviously, a lot of people saying Romero's not good, and Romero's this, and Romero's that, and I just sort of point to the last sort of week with him, and then everyone kind of goes, ooh, interesting. Because if you don't think Romero's good after watching the last week, I don't really know what to say anymore, to be honest. But having him and Mickey will be very beneficial. Massively beneficial. I mean, the beauty of leading into Europe this time around, right? We play first game after the international break is away at Chelsea. We play 3 days later against Southampton at home. Then it's the following Thursday is the first Europa League game. That's us at home, right? Then we play Wolves away the Sunday following that. And then after that, the following Thursday is the away fixture against AZ Alkmaar. So obviously, if things go the way you'd want them to go, and you don't get the injuries that you think you might get, because we always watch Mickey or we watch Romero, and we just expect them to get injured now. If they go into both those games and they're fit and healthy, I think we've got a damn good chance because it's those two, and that's how important both of those two guys are. And I think we've got a chance. But if we were to say, if we go through play Lazio, is it Lazio or Olympiacos? I think it is, who's in the other quarterfinal on our side. I think it is. Don't hold me to that. I could be wrong. Olympiacos are out, aren't they? That Bodo Glimt. Bodo Glimt. That's who it is. Apologies. I fancy us against those two again with those two fit. But let's be glass half empty on this side of things. If we go against Frankfurt, I would expect him to be gone. I think what's keeping him in the job is Europe now. Okay. So all the while we're in Europe, I will back the manager. Does it mean I'm ange? No, it doesn't. So people people heard what I said yesterday when I literally said I'm not ange in or ange out. They said I'm an ange sexual. And it's like, should I be turning up at his front door with a torch and pitchfork and try and attack him to make you to appease you? I've literally said I'm not ange in, but I'm also not ange out. I'm just supporting the club. Because all the while you're in Europe, nothing is going to change. I think everyone needs to kind of just understand that. Nothing is going to change. Once Europe's done, then we have to reflect. Because if we go out against Frankfurt in the quarterfinals, you'll look at the season as a whole and you'll go, quarterfinals Europa League, when we were the favourites, should have done better. EFL Cup got to the semi-final, got knocked out by the champions of England. It can happen. FA Cup, lost away at Aston Villa. Not an easy game. Okay, league form must be good. League form wasn't good. You're like, then this isn't good enough. Simple as that. It will not be good enough. He will be gone. Okay? So, again, if you're sitting there going, oh, Andy's an ansexual, please, doors over there. See you later. All right? The thing is, we've been poor this season, so no doubt in that, but we're a cup team in the Europa League as a cup competition. Last time we won a trophy, we finished 12th and won the Carabao Cup. There you go. Juan de Ramos won more trophies than Pochettino, Conte, Mourinho, Harry. I've heard people call for Harry Redknapp to come back to the club, and I'm like, that's not happening. We're not doing that, are we? But we should have Kulu and Danso back. We can take more risks. There'll be strong backups. Well, look, that will be massive having Kulu back. Obviously, he's been probably our best player this season. But also, when we look at the Southampton game, you look at the Wolves game, we have to get on the mindset of we're going to be heavily rotating those games because we're going to be going gung-ho for Europa League football. Won't we? So those two games, expect a heavily rotated side where we're going to make 7 or 8 changes for both those sort of games. Putting out their early doors before anyone starts to complain that we're rotating. I'm seeing people complain that we're rotating has blown my mind, by the way. It's like, get a player back fit, 90%, ram into the ground. Oh, he's injured again. Right, cool, get the next one, ram him into the ground. Oh, he's injured, get the next one, ram him into the ground. It's like, when you have some players, use them. Bonkers. But anyway, that's the situation in Europe. Going forward into the summer, obviously, we'll have to obviously have a look at the situation. And if the situation is where we are sort of hurtling towards, he won't be here. We'll have a new manager. Who that new manager is, I don't know. I really don't know. I want someone to actually present to me a name and the reason why we're going to go for him and the players that we're sort of going to buy to build on his system instead of making him have to use players from other managers' as systems. And that's the other issue. We get a manager and then we go, right, so your system's this. We got players that fit this system. we're not selling them to work it out. And the manager goes, well, I'm going to need about 6 windows then to get rid of all these players that I don't need because you can't get rid of them anyway because you're too scared of losing a couple of quid, even though you turn over hundreds of millions of pounds. I have to make do. So, don't expect me to get the football that I want straight away. And it's like, no, we want the football straight away. We want success like that. Come on, hurry up. Interesting. It's an interesting decision. So I hope the next manager, if it is not Ange, if it's the next manager, if it's, people telling me about Simone Inzaghi, he's not leaving Inter Milan to come to Spurs. He's not. Inter Milan are a bigger side in terms of a job right now than Spurs, and bigger in terms of a good thing. They are top of the Serie A. It's not Conte, by the way. All of you Conte twerkers, it's not Conte. He's not top. Drew away to second bottom yesterday. Awful football. He's not top. It is Inter Milan. Okay. Are you going to back the manager like Inter try and back their managers? Inter ram their finances into the ground to try and back their managers. Doesn't mean they always can. Finances are tight. Ours aren't. We don't truly go for it. I mean, remember, this summer we bought a guy from Sweden, an 18-year-old from the Championship, and they've had to become massive players for us. And it's great they've developed them. I love both of them. I think they're going to be incredible players. But you also look at Newcastle, who spent 60-odd million on a striker in Alexander Isak. They spent 70-odd million on Tonali, 50-odd million on Bruno Guimaraes. They've spent money. They're going for it where they can. Villa. All right, we sold John Duran, but we're going to bring in Asensio, we're bringing in Rashford. I mean, I didn't personally want Rashford, but that's not the point. They're trying. That's the key message in all of these clubs. They are trying. I don't think we are truly, truly trying. Midfield need a revamp in the summer. I think Basuma and Menska both need to go. Callum, I agree. I think they both need to go. I do. What I have an issue is because, we see both of those guys have a good game and we go, that's what we expect of you. To more frequently have those games. And then that game will happen again, but in about 2 months' time. And you go, what the hell happened in the meantime? And they throw up stinkers. And it's because they don't get consistency. The fact that there's talk about Bentancur getting a contract extension is that is prime example of an issue at the club. We don't want to move them on because that means we have to recruit someone. And normally when you recruit someone, you pay them a higher starting wage. And we don't want to do that. We'll just hold on to our players because it's cheaper. Move him on. He's in his late 20s. What you see right now, he won't get any better because he is in his late 20s. He's at the back end of his prime. So he's going to start declining. If you think Son's declining, back end of your 20s, into your early 30s, you start declining. And Bentancur's 29. He's going to be 29. Bissouma, same thing. Move him on. Bring in someone that's 25, raring to go. Silva, Areola, or Frank, tickle your fancy. My issue with that list is they're all pragmatic managers, and we had the higher level. Areola, not as much. The first and third one, Silva and Frank. We had those sort of managers before, and we had the upper echelon of that manager. We had Antonio Conte and Jose Mourinho. Treble-winning manager for Inter Milan as Jose Mourinho. He's won La Ligas, Premier Leagues, FA Cups, Champions Leagues, Europa Leagues even. Hell, even a Conference League now. We've got Antonio Conte, who, Europe aside, he doesn't do very well in Europe, but he's won Serie A's, he's won Coppa Italia's, he's won Premier Leagues, he's won an FA Cup. Neither of Silva or Frank have done that, right? So we got the upper echelon of that manager. We chased them out. We chased them out because we hated the football. So neither of them are going to have success at Spurs. Areola is another version of Ange, right? Did high pressing football, gets a ton of injuries, by the way. Bournemouth's injury record is not good. It's not as bad as ours, but it's not far behind, and they play once a week. He plays similar sort of style as football to Ange. Look at the recent results. They're not good either. I don't think there's a perfect name out there for everyone. Simone Inzaghi is probably better than all of those guys. We're not going to get him. I hear talk about Xavi, and it's I don't see that happening either. So it's the issue that we have. Do we go for a German guy? That sort of gegenpress, high sort of intensity football. I hear about Herners and, we wanted Nagelsmann for a while. I don't think there's really a name out there even, and that's what we're struggling with. Can we get one of the sort of names that was sort of one of the better names in the German league? Maybe so. I mean, Palace got Glasner, so you could. Glasner was the Frankfurt manager who I believe he was the manager for when they went to the Europa League final. It was the Europa League final. They played Rangers, wasn't it? I think he was the manager. Trippier won a trophy. He did. If we get a new manager, unlike Dennis the Menace, and what's the reality? Mate, you're coming in with some really weird things there, Excel, mate. You're coming in with some very dodgy humans. Can we just simmer down, mate? It's not great. Looking for manager, bottom of the table here, Pearl Cup. I'm pretty sure Southampton have a manager. Glasner won the Europa. Yeah. I mean, look. I see people going, we should go for Glasner. It's like, going to sign a new contract, going nowhere, not happening. I just really have... didn't need to see that thumbnail. Good Lord. I just have an issue with some of the names. The thing is, if you let's say, right, you wanted Thomas Frank, right? Let's go Thomas Frank. So you're going to change your system out massively. You're changing your system from like this really attacking football to more pragmatic. You need to buy the players that suit that football then, which is going to take Frank minimum 4 windows. So you have to give him 2 years, right? Are people going to be patient enough? That's the other issue. If you bring a new manager and you've got to give him at least 4 windows. So are people going to be patient enough to do that? Maybe we finish 9th and we don't have any cup success, but we're building slowly. Are people going to be patient for that? They're not. And that's another issue. Chopping and changing style of sort of managers is another issue. If you move on from manager, you need to get someone who plays attacking football or something at least similar. So therefore, you're not going to need minimum 2 years to rebuild. But anyway, moving on. We've got some more stuff that I want to sort of talk about. Moving into the summer, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? Look, what we need to do this summer is we need a proper clear out. Midfield-wise, we need a clear out. Basuma, Bentancur, move on. Okay, I still think they can be good players. I just, they probably just need a fresh start. It's like what I had with Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. Needs a fresh start. Solid player, needs a fresh start. Wasn't what we wanted, and it wasn't good enough for what we wanted him to do. People will twerk about a 10-minute cameo, and then you watch him start, and you're like, this is why we don't start him, because he's not that good in what we need him to do. Ironically, if you get a pragmatic manager, you might look at bringing him back. I'm joking. But moving on from a couple of those midfielders needs to happen. I think looking at the attack, something needs to be looking. Someone needs to look at this attack and explain to me why we would want to keep players like Richarlison. Love Richie. I love his energy. I think we all do. I think we all like him as a person. I think we like Ange as a person, to be fair. But it's like if with Richie, if you're not going to be able to play, this isn't a charity. This isn't something where we take you through for the rest of the season. Well, it's right. We'll bring you along. Don't worry about it. You're a £60 million striker that plays 500 minutes a season. I do sometimes think some of his injuries are really unfortunate. It's not his fault. And I do also think some of his injuries are down to the fact that his body does break down a little bit. But I'm watching Solanke having to play 90 minutes a week right now. And I'm like, could you imagine if he gets injured again and he breaks down? Because, hey, you're playing 3 games a week. I wouldn't be surprised if players break down. What happens then? You'll get people that obviously call out Ange because it's all his fault. I get that. But no one will go, okay, imagine if Richie had stayed somewhat fit. He needs to be moved on. Okay, he really does this summer need to be moved on. I like our left wing options, to be fair. You're not going to sign 12 players this summer, by the way. So we need to be a little bit more realistic of the idea. And this is with the idea that, let's say, Ange or someone like Ange is our manager next season, okay? So we're still going to play some attacking football and we're still going to press high. We're not going to sit back and play for 45% possession and hit on counters. We're going to still have 55, 60% possession, and we're still going to get on the ball and play, right? You need to get a new striker. You do. I'd like to see a little bit more about old Matisse Tell out on the right wing. I saw some good stuff. Hell, I even saw him on the left wing, beat players and things like that. But with the number 9 position, we do need to move on. Richie is a Brazilian national player. How are we looking down our nose at him? Something ain't right. I don't think it's him. No bad fit, or we are in it to fight him. I'm not looking down on him. I like Richie. I think we all quite like Richie. We like him as a person. We like his attitude. And when he plays, he's half decent. The issue is, for the last sort of few years, he's not played enough. He's not been fit enough. Your best ability is availability, and he's not available. So that's why I'm saying you move him on. You bring someone that can play. You bring someone that's going to actually be around. So that's why you need to look at the striker position. Like I said, left wing, I think you've got some options. Obviously, I think you might even say Wilson Odebear is the right wing option now, starting, like going forward. Maybe Wilson Odebear is the right wing option. I'd like to see more about him on right wing, and before I say definitively he's the right wing option going forward. But I think, the left mid option, if he's not the right wing option, for example, he's not the starter and he's the left wing, then obviously then you go, okay, cool. Well, I think Son and Odebear and Mikey, I think that's some solid left mid options. I think that would probably be all right for a season. I think then after that, Son will be probably moved on. The right wing, you would need to bring someone in right wing. You would. Obviously, there's been talk about Dibbling, Semenyo, Mbeumo. Brian Mbeumo. I don't think he's a perfect fit, but he would, I think, give us a much different dynamic that I quite like. I'm seeing, shouts on Delap. I like Delap. I think he's a good player. I just don't think we will get him. I think he will move to... I think Chelsea could be all over him. I can see Man City bringing him back as well. Arsenal. I think there's quite a few sort of big clubs going to be sniffing around him this summer. I think we might, but I just don't see us getting him. The reason we put a bid in for Guay is because we knew in the summer he's going to have a lot of options, and we wanted to kind of get in early doors so we can get him before those options appear. Do you think we should use 50 million on summer on the budget on Tel? I don't think we should really. Right this second, I'd say no, but I would also say we're March 17th. I think have a look at him at the end of this season. Just give him to the end of the season. If he doesn't wow, you might be able to get a better deal out of Bayern. You might go, look, we like him. We just don't like him for that fee. Can we do a bit of a deal? And Bayern might, like we did with Kulusevski. If he wows and looks incredible for the next sort of couple of months, and everyone goes, "Holy crap, this is a really exciting player," then yeah. But I think we also need to be a bit more patient with some of our younger players. Look, a lot of people wanted Lucas Bergvall gone in January on loan. All my point is, with young players, you need to give them time. I've said about Wilson Odebear. I've said about Bergvall. I said about Gray. I've said about all of our youngsters. You just need to give them time. Odebear, not Odebear, Tell, I don't think he's had a sort of good run on it just yet. With all the injury issues that we had, with him having to play too much football too soon, he wasn't fit enough to play that sort of level of football due to the fact that if you actually look at the situation coming into him joining Spurs, he hadn't really played. So I don't think he's there yet. I just think he just needs a chance just to build. Let's just see what we have into the season. If it hasn't blown the socks off of everyone, I get it. If he's half decent and everyone goes, I wouldn't mind him staying, but I'm scared about that price, Spurs might go back to Bayern. If he wows and everyone goes, holy crap, then you buy him. So just sort of seeing what we got there to the end of the season. Bakayoko, that's an interesting shout when our 36-year-old player that we basically released on a free made him get dropped from the team. What are the odds when Richie leave? He becomes the best striker since sliced breads. I will be there. You like Johnson? You think he'll be a Spencer revelation? I'm not too sure. It's the same thing with every other player at Spurs. Richie had no problem medically at Everton. This has happened to too many players coming into Spurs. Me trying to pin it on Ange. To be fair, it will with Richie. He did have some issues in the last couple of seasons, I think, with Everton. I do remember him missing time. Not as much as like the time that he misses at Spurs, but I think he has missed some time. We won't be getting Frimpong. He will probably end up at Real Madrid or Liverpool, is my guess, Tell needs a preseason, but he can't press. I think that's more of a fitness thing. He hasn't had an opportunity to get his fitness up. If buy option was 20 million, mate, if the buy option was 20 million on Matisse Tell, I would be jumping all over that, head over heels. I'd be hand delivering the 20 million myself. There's a lot of pressure bringing in the youth. Hard to name a 25-man squad without youth players. Had to watch this again, lol. Hello all. I'm just time to say goodbye. That's all right. That's all right, Steve. But look, looking forward, there needs to be an overhaul of the squad. We need to be able to take losses on players. We're going to obviously move off of squad spot players this summer. With obviously Reguilon's going to be one player gone. Werner will be another one gone. Forster will be gone. If you move off of Basuma, that's another player squad. That's 4 squads already. It's 4 squad spots already that players will be moved on. You might move on from. I mean, right a second, they need to move on from Bentancur. That'll be 5. If you don't keep Tell, for example, that'll be 6. So you can easily create the squad spaces in the squad for players, but you still need to keep bringing through those youngsters. But doing so when you've competent seniors as well. That's the other thing. These young players will develop so much more. I think Lucas Berg Van Archie would be even better surrounded by more senior players. Kubo and Minter are the players we can buy Johnson's money. Okay. And Ben Davies might be here. I don't know. I don't know about Davies right this second. He has his benefits, obviously being versatile at left back and centre back, but I just don't know. I would personally look to maybe move him on. It's cheaper to keep him, though, isn't it? Than actually have to buy someone, and that's what they might do. And that's what I'm trying to get. I'm trying, as much as I think we need to be doing X, Y, and Z, I just know that ownership won't go X, Y, and Z. They'll go X and then half of Y, and then they'll call that the job they've done, So we'll see. We'll see. I think there's a lot that needs to happen this summer, though. Obviously, we won't really be able to look at anything in terms of, extending players or buying even those players that are on those options until the summer. But also, the ending of this season is going to be so crucial. Like if you get past Frankfurt, the way I look at it, you're 5 wins away from winning the Europa League. Not even 5 wins. In theory, you could be 3 wins away from the Europa League, right? And maybe you throw in a couple of draws. You could be 3 wins away from the Europa League, which is kind of mental when you think about it. You are 5 games away from winning it in terms of 2 games in the quarters, 2 games in the semis, 1 game in the final. It's funny how that we would look at that season as a success in the end. I think there'll be some people that won't, and because they don't like Ange, but that will be a success because you would have won a trophy, which is kind of a sad state of affairs. And we shouldn't be there. We should still be able to buy quality players to come and play now without having to spend all of our energies going too far on the youth side of things. I mean, having Archie and Lucas come in, love it. But we should have also brought in 3 or 4 senior players this summer. And we didn't. We waited to January. Half the season's already plummeted by then. And we brought in Danso, and you're thinking, right, we got Radu, we got Danso. Okay, we got some centre-back options. And then Radu obviously shatters his knee. And then they didn't replace him. Because what they've said is, got Vuskovic and Phillips in the summer. That's what it's always about. It's always, we don't want to spend money now. We've got something in the option. We've got some options in the summer that we can use, which are cheaper. It's a real issue there. But look, there's a lot of stuff to get into. Thank you all so much for watching me for the time you have watched me. There's a lot of stuff to get in there with how the league's gone, how the cups have gone, how sort of the summer should look, how everything is right this second. I think there's a lot of stuff that can change between now and the end of the season. I think there's a lot of things, the way we're going, in terms of the trajectory that we're on right this second, things would need to change massively in terms of movement of players and managers. But if it was to be glass half full, we do actually somehow win the Europa League. Obviously, people tell you we're not going to, but they have no evidence that we can or can't because football's unpredictable. But if a glass half full, if you can win it, then there is a real conversation to have. Because all I'm going to say is, for the amount of time is that I have said we are so similar to Manchester United in so many different ways, I get more and more correct on that point every single week. Every single week. And you'll guarantee someone going, We drew Leicester. They beat them yesterday. It's like, okay, you weirdo. Wasn't talking about just one game, all right? Talking about bigger picture. That's the issue that I'm having. Try and look at the bigger picture, not here. Take the blinkers off. Bigger picture. We're so similar to Manchester United, just without the wage revenue and spending on transfers. Everything else is pretty much the exact same. So look, really interested to see what you think about that. The only thing we've learned this season, Ange, is not the man to lead us to this promised land. Mate, we've learned so much more than just that. So much more. And I think a lot of things that we sort of knew have now come to fruition. And things we definitely knew have just proven more evidence as to why they're also an issue. Okay. Rebuild's only half done. Is it Ange or the players not fitting the system? I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. Afternoon, identity, how are you, mate? But yeah, thank you all so much for watching me. Let me know down in the comments down below your thoughts and feelings about all the stuff that's gone on this season and try and have a discussion with it. I can't be bothered with just snipe comments, all right? I won't respond to them. But have a conversation with me and I'll definitely respond to you, all right? Good to see you on Oso Spurs. Are you going there next? No, I won't be going there today. But yeah, Jim on Oso Spurs invited me on yesterday to chat about Spurs, which is a bit more of a frank, jokey vibe. Go and watch it if you've missed it. I think I joined 20 odd minutes in. I did it, literally finished live. I messaged him. He was like, "Oh, here's a link. Come join us now." So I jumped on, had a conversation. They were a good bunch of lads. Hopefully, I'll get on with a bit more time next time. And I look forward to seeing Jim again. He's a good dude, I can tell. Felt like I could actually have a conversation with him, you know? But anyway, thank you so much for watching, everyone. I appreciate it. I'll be back tomorrow with the loan roundup, something a bit more vibey. We'll be back to talk about that as well. Take care, everyone. Look after yourselves. Peace.